So we're going to work with this example. We're only going to do one because I think one yesterday and one today is probably going to be enough for you to do some of the other problems that you've got on that worksheet and get ready for your test. All right, so I'm giving us one that doesn't have a 1 as my leading coefficient, so it's got different factors. And so we are going to end up with options that are integers and some that are fractions. All right, so just like you did yesterday, all right, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to list your possible. All right, so we're going to list our possible rational zeros so that way we have some sort of place to start. And you need to remember that those are all of the fractions p over q, where the numerator is factors of 5, so it's factors of that constant term. And all of the denominator comes from factors of 2. And it does not matter if the integer values are positive or negative. So the fact that that's a positive 5 on some of the work you're doing, if it's a negative 5, you're still using the plus and the minus options because you don't know which one necessarily it was. Right. So the numerator options, you have plus or minus 1, plus and minus 5, and then you've got your denominator options. So when you make your list of possibles, these are all the values for x. Now again, if I start with my denominators, I can use plus or minus 1 and 5 with a denominator of 1. And then I also have the fractions where those are the numerators with a denominator of 2. And so this gives me my list of possible rational zeros. Now, if none of those work, then that means that there are no rational zeros and everything else would be either radicals or like the little complex numbers with the I. So I'm hoping that one of these 8 is going to work. All right. So that's your list. Remember, when you're doing your list, you have to write x equals, all right, because those are zeros. Right? It's an actual process. So now you got to find one. And so now our function name is f, and so now we're going to start, I always start with f of 1. Try to figure out what that is. Let's see, so 2 minus 1 minus 10 plus 1. No, that gets me a negative 4. All right, so for this one, my value is negative 4, which means that 1 didn't work. All right, don't get to use it. So now you got to start with, then try negative 1. All right, because I don't really know. Negative 1 might work. It's possible. So part of this is going to be your order of operations and making sure that you get the correct value that pops out. So let's see, minus 2, minus 1, plus 10, plus 5. Well, that gives me an 8. Yeah. Can't use that one. So now I've got to decide what I'm going to do. All right, so I could continue moving on the list, and I can start with plus or minus 5 next. All right. I mean, it doesn't matter which ones you pick. It just means that so far, of my possibles, neither of those two works. All right, so now I'm down to 6 other possibilities. So you got to keep going. Now I'm pretty sure that that's not going to work just because 5 cubed is 125, and times 2 makes that what, 250? I'm pretty sure this is not going to work. I can double check it, but I'm yeah, that's a large number. I don't know, but that's not 0. All right, so I'm going to stop with that one. And so I'm getting kind of tired of doing positive, negative, so I'm going to jump over to a fraction, and I'm just going to try a fraction. And so that's the thing, is that once you're starting to go down the list, if you start trying to see, okay, well, the positive 5's not working, I'm pretty sure that doing a negative 5 where I'm going to have, like a negative 250 is probably not going to work either. Then I'm going to start trying some fractions and see if I can get something over here to work. All right. Now you can change the 1/2 and you can just do it as 0.5. All right. But you got to be careful how you enter it. And that does work. All right. And so I'm like, yay, finally. All right, so I'm getting kind of tired of it. All right, so finally I found something. All right, so you have to keep going through the list. And like I said, once you find ones that aren't working, just pick one. All right. Now that you've got one that works, now you're going to use your synthetic division. All right, so remember, when you find that 0, this value right here on the inside, that is the value for x. That is one of your zeros. All right, I don't care about the others right now, but that's the one that I'm going to need. So when I write out what my zeros are, that's the first one. So I'm going to use that number exactly the way it is on the outside of my synthetic division. All right, so I'm not missing any spaces, so I don't need any placeholders. And if you have to do this on a calculator, that's fine, but half of 2 is 1. All right? And so then when I multiply those two together, I get half, which makes this what? What now? Oh, I need to bring down the 2, sorry. Sorry, you're right. I was doing the multiplication already. I didn't bring it down. My fault, my fault. You're right, you're right. I need to bring down the 2 so that way when I do the half of 2, sorry, it's 1. Sorry, I'd already done the multiplication before I brought it down. So then that's 0, which is fine because that's 0, and that's minus 5. There we go. All right, so now you're down to your second degree. And so this is one of those where you're missing that middle term. And so you've got your x squared, and you've got your constant. And so you can use this with the quadratic formula, or you can just use that, what do you call it? The square root property. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do, is that because I see that, I'm going to use the square root property. Yep. So 2x squared minus 10 equals 0. And you have to isolate the x squared. So bring 10 over. And then you got to divide it by 2. And so now when you take the square root of both sides, you're going to get that your other zeros are when x is plus or minus root 5. So if your job was only to find the zeros, like this did not say to factor completely, it just said find your zeros. I get the plus and minus root 5 that I just found, plus the half that I started my whole process with. So it's pretty much when you get down to that third step, if you have to do the quadratic formula, that's fine. If you can use this square root property, that's fine. Whatever you need to do.